5 things that Madden 22 absolutely has to do better than Madden 21. Now, Madden 21 is looked at as one of the worst Maddens ever. A lot of people say it is the worst Madden ever, but people said that about Madden 20, they said it about Madden 19, and the truth is, none of those Maddens are the worst Madden ever. I would say Madden 06 on Xbox 360 takes the cake, but the common theme of these last few years is all of these games are closer to being the worst Madden ever than they are to being a mid-tier level or a high-end level Madden game that we've known in the past. And this was the year that everybody kind of hit their breaking point. It took a long time for people with Madden to hit their breaking point. They've been giving it a pass, they've been giving it chances for a long time, and that all went out the window this year. It's got a 0.2 user score on Metacritic, which is the worst rated game of all time. Even official reviewers like IGN and others that would always give games like Madden, 2K, and FIFA passes saying, hey, they worked on this, they added this, it's a step in the right direction, it's still about an 8 out of 10. Even that went out the window this year, and pretty much every major review company gave it lower scores and said, enough is enough, this is just very underwhelming and it's been too many years of not enough development. Now, I actually thought Madden 20 as a game did a lot of things to take a step in the right direction, but 21 didn't really capitalize on any of those things. The gameplay didn't improve. If anything, it probably got worse in a lot of areas. Franchise mode had nothing added at the beginning of the game. They didn't build on things like Superstar KO or the scenario engine. Face of the franchise didn't get any better either. So with that being said, let's talk about 5 things that Madden 22 absolutely has to do better than Madden 21. Now, I've made videos like this in the past, and sometimes some of those things come true. There's a lot of times that things don't come true, but I think I've narrowed it down to 5 things that we need to steer in the right direction for this game. Now, number 1 on the list is obviously gameplay, and this is the area that Madden struggles with the most. But what's interesting is I've talked to tons of people from both the sim community, the competitive community, the franchise guys, the Madden Ultimate Team guys, and a lot of people kind of accept Madden's gameplay to a degree for what it is. It has its own style, it has its own type of feel that we know is a mix of sim and arcade. It's not as simulated as the sim crowd wants it to be, but it's also not as balanced as, you know, the competitive crowd would like it to be. However, there's a lot of people that I've talked to that it seems like could overlook some flaws with the gameplay if the rest of the game was just deep, if the modes were deep, if there was a lot of stuff to do in the game, if franchise was good, if content was good, if there was a lot of new things being put forward. There's a lot of people that could get over the fact that, hey, the gameplay isn't close to perfect. With that being said, the gameplay still needs to improve a lot to even get to that point where it's not close to perfect. We're talking about things like blocking that have just been bad for years. Blocking just seems to be one of those things that just hasn't been right and they can't get right. They don't know how to block certain assignments. They don't know how to lead block or target block very well. We have other issues in the game like abilities that are now a whole new layer to the game that makes ratings feel almost useless, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they even considered taking them out this year, but that's another discussion for another time. Things like zone coverage that just can't cover the sideline or can't cover deep. There's so many areas of the gameplay that just need work, and we're not asking for perfect, but we really need it to be much better than it is right now. And I think a lot of this, what it comes down to, is the game needing a rebuild in some ways. I'm not even saying tear the entire game down to its core and start over, but I think there's certain elements of the game that need to be stripped down. Things like blocking, things like certain zone coverage logic and AI. I do think some things need to be stripped back down and rebuilt again. That doesn't mean you have to redo the entire player movement. That doesn't mean you have to redo all of the animations in the game, but there's no reason blocking, zone coverage, field spacing, and just simple things like this, ball trajectory, there's no reason all of those things should be as bad as they are. Those things need to be better. Now, number 2 on the list is clearly franchise mode, and this was the year of Fix Madden Franchise, where the franchise community hit their breaking point and they got it trending on Twitter and all social media. They were a big driving force behind that 0.2 user score on Metacritic because they are the community that felt like they had been slighted the most. But the thing is a lot of other people pitched in on this because even if you didn't play franchise, you're not happy with the gameplay, you're not happy with other things in the game, and this was a good thing. And the one thing that I do believe will give Madden 22 a little bit of hope potentially, because it's the first time that EA actually gave in and really listened. Like, they made multiple statements, they changed the whole course of what they were going to do this year. They made multiple franchise updates throughout the year, and yes, they weren't the greatest updates, where I'm not going to pat them on the back for it, but it's just the fact that those were not planned. They were not going to do that, and these were things that had been asked for a while. Yes, they were on the smaller end of things, but they've been asked for a long time, and the community was not getting them. Well, they finally put those things in there and also announced some of the bigger features that people want. They're planning to actually do that for Madden 22. Now, here's the thing. This is the first time they've really received backlash on this level. This is the first time that they've actually given in and changed the course of things and added stuff that wasn't planned. And even went as far as to say, hey, if that's not enough, hey, we're going to do this next year too. They never talk about what they're going to do next year until it's actually that time. So that shows you that they felt worried about it. And the other part of this is that 2K is back in the market now. They have an arcade NFL game coming out later this year. Yes, it's not a direct competitor with Madden, but the fact that their foot's back in the door and they have a relationship with the NFL, that combined with the fact that EA finally saw their community fully push back in a big way and said, we're not standing for this anymore, those are two things now that make them have to put more effort into the game. Because if they come back out this year with not a lot of development improvement, if they don't deliver on the things that they already said they were going to do for franchise and then just fix the rest of the game as a whole, people are going to keep pushing back now, because now they saw that it worked. They saw that they could get them to give in, and as much money and sales as they do, no company wants that backlash. That backlash means the NFL is paying attention. They have a relationship with 2K again, which means if this pushback keeps happening from the community and people are fed up, well, in a few years, the NFL might give 2K another shot to make a simulation game, and of course EA doesn't want that, because then that means they have to compete and they might lose a lot of people. So Fixed Madden franchise is really the tipping point that I think actually gives future Madden some hope, because it actually puts some things in motion that otherwise was not going to happen. Number 3 on the list are the post-launch updates. EA dropped the ball with this year, and this is how they sell the game now. Well, it's a game as a live service. You might not have everything at launch, but you're going to get tons of stuff throughout the year. And that's kind of what they did with franchise mode after the pushback. They treated franchise as a game as a service, and they did 3 title updates for franchise throughout the year. Obviously, they do that with modes like the Yard and Ultimate Team and other things as well, but this year was the worst because so many things they promised they didn't deliver on. They promised multiple big playbook updates. They didn't do it. They promised, as always, to do multiple updates to Superstar and X Factor players changing the abilities. They didn't do that. They did 1 update. Last year, they did at least 3 or 4. That is one of the biggest parts of the game, are abilities now. The game revolves around that, and they hardly touched those this year. Player likeness, they didn't do any player likeness updates. Equipment updates outside of mouthpieces, they didn't do it. Last year, they did tons of new stuff. Cleats, gloves, face masks, helmet. They did a lot of different stuff. So this year, the post-launch support of the game was the worst it's been in the last few years, but it was the year that they advertised and hyped it up the most. And when people are buying the game, they take that into account. So a lot of people are kind of pissed off about that, and I mean, they should be, because that was something that was promised and they just did not deliver on it. So for Madden 22, especially in the current gaming climate where post-launch updates are such a big thing, that has to be better than Madden 21. There's no excuse. Number 4 on the list is mode development. And when I say this, I mean franchise mode, Ultimate Team, the Yard, Face of the Franchise, Superstar KO. These are all the different modes that we have in the game. And I actually think EA is doing a good job with that in terms of having multiple different modes to play, different ways to engage with the game. That's one of the areas the game is actually good, is having different things to do. The problem is the development within each of these modes needs to be a lot better. Now, we've already discussed franchise mode on its own for obvious reasons. Ultimate Team, I think, is probably the best overall mode in terms of being updated and having content. There's still tons of stuff people have been asking for, like a practice mode or more customization, for example, but those would be nice to have, but the mode itself is probably in the best state of everything else. Face of the Franchise is bad. You need to figure something out with Face of the Franchise. Going from year 1 to year 2 Face of the Franchise, it got worse. It didn't get better. It was pretty much the same thing, little tweaks, but it didn't add any extra replayability to it. You need to go back to the old Superstar mode. You need to give people what they want. It's not Face of the Franchise. We need a good career mode, but the development within it needs to be much better than it has been. When you compare that to like an NBA My Career type thing, it's not even in the same ballpark. Then you've got the Yard. I thought the Yard was fine for year 1, but people definitely got tired of it quick because there was only so much to do within it. Again, year 1, so that is expected, but they need to build on that in year 2. There's a lot of stuff they could do with the Yard to make it cool, to make it interesting, and I want to see them build on that, because what happened with Superstar KO, for example, that was new last year, and then coming into this year, they didn't really build off of it. They didn't do much new with it. They added a tweak like midway through the year with a different way to play it, but they didn't really do much to mess with it. And I think that's bad. I think you can't introduce a new mode and then not do anything with it next year. That kills all excitement for the mode, because now it just looks like, oh, this was a 1 year like kind of cash grab, like, oh, here's something new. In a few years it might not even be in the game anymore. No, base of the franchise needs more development. The yard needs more development because it has a lot of potential. Superstar KO is kind of straightforward, it is what it is, but there's so many different interesting things you can do with it. They need to develop that this year, along with their other modes like franchise and ultimate team. And number 5 on the list is something that Madden struggles with all the time, and that is balancing. The balance is always bad with the game. There's some years that it's better than others, and that's what I'm looking for. I need a year that's better than others. It doesn't need to be great, it doesn't need to be better than others. Madden 20 was one of the most unbalanced games ever with the stretch run and the way you could play defense. And then you come to Madden 21, and again, it's very unbalanced. Only one type of quarterback works, which is gunslinger type quarterbacks. They kind of nerfed the mobile QB to an extent this year, because the way that you throw the ball this year, it seems like QBs just have no type of throw power without a gunslinger type ability or a really good release. They made man defense so good this year, and they didn't really do anything to make it less good. It's brain dead how you play defense this year, much like it was last year. Two different styles of defense, but it's just, you don't even have to think, and that's not good for any game that's striving to be somewhat competitive. And there's different ways they could have tried to make man defense less overpowered or make receivers better when running routes, and they just didn't do any of that this year. The zone defense is god awful this year in many ways, and again, they didn't do much to try to fix that or make it better. Game balancing has been an issue in this game forever. We deal with it every year, but like I said, some years it is better than others, and that's what we're looking for. I need in Madden 22, I need it to be better than it was in 21 and better than it was in 20, and if it is, that makes the game infinitely better. The closer you get to balance, even if you're not close to it at all, but the closer you can get to it makes the game significantly better. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Check out some of these other videos right here, and as always, I will see you guys next time.